Today, I'm truly honored and thrilled to introduce to you Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you. CWA is the first place that I'm holding public remarks, really, since our June 26th election. And that, to me, is an important and conscious decision because we meet a machine with a movement. And there's no movement in America like the labor movement. And I want to thank Bob Masters, Dennis Traynor, Chris Shelton, Gladys Finnegan, Betty Rosenstein, Pat Telescope, Amy Young, Billy Gallagher. I want to thank you all for having me here today. It's very much an honor. I think we're gathering here today at a very important moment, a very critically important moment. Not because it's a moment of resistance, but because this is a moment of persistence. This is a moment of inspiration. This is a moment of work. Because what's happening right now is not necessarily the death of a movement, but the birth of one. We have the birth of one. When I first started my race, I kind of made this decision about 2 years ago, and I didn't even know that I was making it. It was after the 2016 election, and I kind of dove myself into activism. I was trying to figure out what was really going on in this country. And while there are a lot of people that may say union politics don't work in the Midwest, I think we know a little bit differently. That's right. I think we know a little bit differently. I think we know that the fierce advocacy of economic, social, and racial justice for working class Americans works everywhere. Don't let anybody tell you any different. Don't let anybody tell you any different. And so after the 2016 election, I went to Flint, Michigan. I met with organizers there. And what I heard was that our systems were breaking down, that our leaders were not there, and that corporations were really taking over. To this day, Nestle is paying $400 for essentially to bottle unlimited water, while some working people still have $400 a month water bills. Unacceptable. But we are the champions of that movement. We will be the champions of Flint. We will be the champions of the Bronx. We will be the champions of Queens because we can champion ourselves. We don't have to look to anybody else to do that for us. We do not have to look to anybody else to give us that power. We can create it ourselves, and that's what we did on June 26th. After I went to Flint, I headed to Standing Rock, and this was really, I was working in restaurants at this time. I packed up a 20-year-old Subaru with a good friend of mine. The cigarette lighter didn't work, so we had to stop at gas stations to charge our phones. And we ended up at Standing Rock. And Standing Rock was an Indian reservation in South Dakota where fossil fuel corporations had militarized themselves against the American people. You know, we even had a woman out in Brooklyn who, unfortunately, her arm was blown off while she was in nonviolent protest. We have front lines in America in this day. Make no mistake about it. There are modern-day Selmas. There are modern-day Birminghams. These fights go on today. This is not a chapter in a history book. It is alive. It is present. And we need to acknowledge the roots and the history of the labor movement, of the civil rights movement, and the movement for social justice in America, because that is where we pick up our mantle. This is where we pick up our mantle. Ferguson is the new Selma. Standing Rock is the new Birmingham. And these moments are alive and present today. And in that classic refrain, a fight and injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Yes, yes, yes. The threat to working people in Janus is a threat to American prosperity. The threats to criminal justice reform, the threats to civil liberties in Rikers is a threat to each and every single one of our individual liberties and safety and communities. And this is where our strength can be drawn. This is where our strength can be drawn, because we do not dissipate our power by standing with brothers and sisters outside of this room. We grow it. We grow it. It's important. One of the things I was thinking about this morning is the word union. The word union. Because we think of union as an organization, we think of union as the things we turn our cards into, but union is a verb. We use the word union for a reason, because in the same words used in the creation of this nation, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. Unum, unity, union. That is where we draw our strength as working class Americans. And it's not just who we pay our dues to, but it's the greater movement that we are a part of. Because when we link hands, when we interlink our arms, when people see us when people see us on those front lines protesting what is happening on our borders, the separation of children in our family, when people see union members out there for them, they will be there for the union too. That is how we build our strength. That is how we build our strength. So there's often this false argument that I hear. You have to choose between culture and class, race and class, identity and class. And we all know that that's not true. We all know that in an America that is growing, that is blooming, our strength is drawn through love of others. Our strength is drawn by crossing and interlinking hands across race, religion, creed, class, even political opinion, in order to fight for our collective economic, social, and racial rights. That is how we move forward as a nation. And that is why there is such a strong attempt at divisiveness, to divide us. Do not be scared to say things like Black Lives Matter, because that makes the union strong. That makes the union strong. Do not be afraid to stand up for our Muslim brothers and sisters, because that makes the union strong. Do not be afraid to stand up for the rights of immigrants and the dignity of people, regardless of status, because that makes the union strong. It makes the union strong. And that is why they're trying so hard to deepen those fault lines, because they know that the source of the union strength is our collective unity. So I wanted to say another thing, too. It's no secret that in our personal race, we were definitely outgunned. So in Standing Rock, essentially what I had seen was I saw the Lakota Sioux and Native peoples and all these people across the country come together. And they put their lives on the line, they put their bodies on the line. I was there in the middle of winter in South Dakota. At night it got to about negative 60 degrees oftentimes in South Dakota, and we're in tents with little you're literally burning wood in a stove. There's like a special stove that you can have in a tent. And it was this time in winter. It was a very dark time. It was after the election. And a lot of people had given up hope. A lot of people had left. So I was going into the camp at a time when there was a very small amount of people. But those people were the most committed people to the cause. They were the most committed people to the cause. And those are the people in this room today. This right here is negative 60 degrees in the middle of winter in South Dakota. That's what this is. That is what this moment is in the labor movement. That is what this movement is. But as we know, one day longer, one day stronger. Right. We know that. Because the blessed thing about winter is that it is a time of cleansing. It is a time of fortification. It is a time when we build our strength. Because we make it through this, we make it through everything. And we will. And we will make it through this. Now is the time to trim the fat. Now is the time to strengthen up. Now is the time to train in our skills in organizing. Because the strength of the union has always been and will always be in our membership. In our membership. So I saw what was going on with the Lakota Sioux, and I saw people put everything on the line. They were sleeping negative 60 degrees in the middle of winter time. They're putting their bodies on the line. They were still organizing out here. And it was some of the strongest and most inspiring organizing I've seen. It was a spiritual fight. It was a physical fight. It was everything. And I walked away from that experience and I said, I got to do more. These people out here doing that demands more of each and every single one of us. I did not know what that was. I had felt called to Standing Rock, to be honest. That is why I went. People were asking me, why are you going? You're not from South Dakota. You're a girl from the Bronx. What are you doing going out there? I've never been camping alone in my life. But I felt called. And I feel right now that all of us in this moment are being called. Yes. We are all being called to be better. We are all being called to organize. We are all being called to educate and expand the electorate and the membership of our union. That is what we are being called to do in this moment. So I didn't know, but I knew I had to do more. And lo and behold, the day that I drove off camp at Standing Rock, I received a phone call from two organizations, Justice Democrats and Brand New Congress, and they said, hey, we're trying to get money out of politics in the 2018 midterm elections. And we want to field everyday working people with a track record of service to their community to run for office. And your name came across our desk. Would you be interested in running? And I knew walking off that camp, having that feeling that I needed to do more, and the fact that I received that phone call was not a coincidence. I was being called. I knew that I was being called. And so I said, I'll think about it, because it's scary. But we all rise to that call eventually. And after a couple of months of really mulling this over, I decided to commit my run for Congress 1 year ago. I committed to running in late May, early June of 2017, so just about a little over 1 year ago. At that time, I was working 60, 70-hour weeks in a restaurant. I was bartending. I was waitressing. I have a history as an educator and an organizer in my community, but when the financial crisis hit, my entire family was wiped out. My father actually passed away as the markets were crashing. And so I was back to being, so I was suddenly in the midst of a single-parent household. My mom was cleaning houses and driving school buses. And I started working in restaurants to help my family keep our home and make ends meet. I know what it's like to live in a right-to-work environment. And I do not want my brothers and sisters to experience what I experienced. I know what it's like to be forced by an employer to clock out before my work is done. I know what it's like to work shoulder to shoulder with undocumented people in this country getting paid $4 or $5 an hour so that they could stay here because they are terrified of what is happening back home. I know what it's like to work 18-hour days and not get a break. And that is not a state of dignity that we should accept in the United States of America. And our only front line and our only protection is the labor movement and unions, period. So while I may not have had the privilege or the great benefit of being a unionized worker, I know exactly the privilege and the benefits and the treasure that you all hold. And we should extend that as much as possible. So I started running, and I printed some flyers and had some clipboards, and I put them in a brown paper grocery bag, and I hid them behind a bar. And that's how I started my campaign. That's how I started my campaign for Congress. Sometimes some folks may have seen some of the posters that were designed, and some perhaps our website. And some people said, wow, how did you get those posters? Those posters were designed by regulars at the restaurant that I helped open. That's grassroots, baby. That's grassroots. And so I started, I was working in a restaurant in Union Square in downtown Manhattan far away from the Bronx and Queens. That's a long commute, if any of you guys know it. And it's an even longer commute on these days' subways, because it's a mess. But anyways, what I did know is that Manhattan, especially nowadays, is a crossroads. People go into Manhattan from the outer boroughs. So I still knew that I had constituents coming in and sitting at my tables every day. So I talked to everybody. And that's how I started my organizing. With the little scraps of time that you have left. We think of organizing as just cutting a turf and walking a block. That is important work, but organizing is every time you meet a new person. Every time you get a cup of coffee in the morning, that's organizing. Every time you find your groceries, that's organizing. Every time you go to church, that's organizing. Every time you meet people is an opportunity for social transformation. And that is what is being asked of us in this moment. So I started this campaign out of a brown paper bag. I would wake up in the morning. I would put my clothes, a change of clothes in a brown paper bag because my restaurant clothes would be all sweaty and messy at the end of the day. And I would put some flyers. I would put a clipboard. And after work was over, I would go to the back. I would change my clothes. I would tell everyone I was just going to a party every day. And I would go to living rooms across the district. And I would just start going on Facebook. I would go on Twitter. And I just said, hey, I guess I'm running for Congress now. And that's how this whole thing started. And people said, I'm interested. And it would start with one person. One person would say, I want to invite my friends and neighbors over to hear what you have to say. We were up against a multi-generational political machine. We were outspent 10-1. We had every single incumbent come out and endorse against us. And with love, we didn't have any union endorsements either. But we also knew that we were movement, though. You know, there was kind of a wink there, I'll tell you, because we went after rank and file. That's what we did, because that's the work of organizing. And so we went in, and anybody who would say, hey, I'm willing to listen, I talked to living rooms of 2 people, of 5 people, of 10 people. And I did it over and over and over again. I would get out of work, I would clock out, I would hop on the subway to Queens and the Bronx and just go to people's living rooms and have a cup of coffee. I did that for the first 8 months of my campaign. The first 8 months of my campaign. We would fundraise very, very little. Very little. Each and every week, you know, we'd have fundraising days. We'd be lucky if we brought in $200, you know, $300 here and there from very early people who believed. And that is the seed of movements everywhere. Don't ever think something is too crazy. Don't ever think a vision is too unattainable. If you believe it is right, then we are obligated to support it. Period. That's right. Period. Too many people in this political moment, regardless of party, too many people, whether it's voters, whether it's incumbents, whether it's organizations, are sitting on the fence. Too many are sitting on the fence that say, I agree with you, but I'm too scared to come off the fence. Come off the fence. Come off the fence. This right here, I think this moment that we've had and what we showed on June 26th, it's an invitation. It's an invitation for all of us to step it up. Because when we step it up, we show what's possible. Don't ever think there's too much big money. Don't ever think that the forces are insurmountable. They are not. Because so long as there is shoe leather, so long as there is hard work, then victory is possible in America. It is always possible. I started this campaign out of a brown paper bag. And slowly but surely, 1, 2, 5, 10 people at a time, people started to believe this was possible. And I just laid out the facts. In New York 14, we started. I knew it was one of the lowest voter turnout districts in America. It was one of the lowest voter. You could go to Congress with less votes than a city council seat in some areas. And let me tell you something, that opportunity is in so many places in the United States. Every single place where there is low turnout, we can take. That's ours. That's ours. Because it's low turnout because big money can't buy it. The only way, and we said this in our campaign, our race and our campaign is about people versus money. That's what it's about. And if they got money, we need to get people. We need to get people. That is our job right now. Our job is to organize every single morning, have these conversations. Our job is to invite people to our table, extend that table far beyond all of our communities. And slowly but surely we will build. Slowly but surely we will build. But we cannot wait until the moment that we are needed to start that work. We cannot wait until something like Janice for us to start organizing. We start slowly but surely building our membership. That's what it takes. It takes the brown paper bag. Every single one of us has that brown paper bag. Every single one of us has that capacity. Every single one. And so for the first 8 months of our campaign, with no money, nobody was paid on this thing for a very, very long time. We just did it with some Facebook, I'm a millennial, so we tried to use that, but everybody has their own advantage. Whether you have your church, that's your Facebook. If you have your community, your civic, that's your Facebook. But Facebook is good too if you like that. And so that's how we started the first 8 months of our campaign. And then we just hit a critical mass. We had gotten to enough living rooms where all of a sudden there were 50 people. I went from all of a sudden going to 5, 10-person living rooms to all of a sudden, a couple months ago, we packed our first church in the Bronx, St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Parkchester. And we called it, and I was really nervous because I had only been talking to groups of 5 to 10 people, and we said, okay, we're gonna have an organizing session. We're gonna teach people how to organize. 120 people showed up. We went from 10 to 120. No one had seen that in that area of the Bronx. Everyone had told me it was not possible. They said, people don't care in the Bronx, is what they said. People won't organize in the Bronx. People won't vote in the Bronx. When I first started this race, people said, only go after your triple prime voters, what is known as your triple prime, people who have voted in the last 3 primary elections. Only care about those people. And they said, everybody else is quote unquote a waste of time. That is what I was told. But when you are saying that people who are not currently active in the political process is a waste of time, what you're actually saying is working class Americans are a waste of time. What you're actually saying is that people of color are a waste of time. What you're actually saying is that young people are a waste of time. And to me, that is not an acceptable statement. It is not an acceptable statement. The way that we are going to change the country is by activating people who don't feel invited to the table. We need to extend our palm, because for too long, it's been the other way around. We say, oh, they don't vote, so why should we talk to them? No. We need to extend that invitation first. We need to extend that invitation. And when people are invited, they feel cared for, they feel loved, and they will join us. They will join us. So, and that's exactly what happened. It took until the last, it almost felt like the last moment. We were operating on pure faith, pure belief that what we were doing was right for about 85-90% of the campaign. The entire time. Why am I doing this? Because it's the right thing to do. Why are we doing it? Because it's the right thing to do. And that road is marched alone for a long time. But someone has to maintain that fire. Someone has to keep the candle. And the people in the room are keeping the candle for the labor movement. Because it will grow again. And it is the people in this room that will grow it again. On June 26th, we were outspent 10-1. Television ads were running the entire month of June during Yankee games on major news networks for my opponent. Mailers, glossy mailers, we called them Victoria's Secret catalogs. We're getting mailed 10, 15 of them per voter in every single person's mailbox. We had 3 postcards to a small group of voters. That's what we could afford. We We were going after a multi-generational political machine. There are extensions. Tammany Hall is alive and well in New York City. It is alive and well in New York City, and it comes at the expense of working people. It comes at the expense of people of color. It comes at the expense of those who have not yet received or have chosen not to receive a college education. It comes at the expense of those. It comes at the expense of the disabled and the elderly. But our job is to introduce a new era of justice in the United States of America, and that's what we're here to do. That's exactly what we're here to do. Because despite being outspent 10 to 1, despite having people's mailboxes filled with the opposite, we prevailed. We prevailed. And people want to write off this victory as a fluke. People want to say it was an accident of demography, or an accident of this, that, and the other, of this moment. Let me tell you something. We just found out last night. I was shocked. We're in the car. We accidentally won a second primary last night in New York 15 via write-in ballot. That's not an accident. And full disclosure, I did not try to do that. That is not an accident. That is a movement. That is not an accident. That is a movement. Don't let them convince you that our successes are an accident. Our successes are the consequence of hard work. Let me tell you exactly what it took in New York 14. We knocked on 120,000 doors. We made 100, thank you. We knocked on 120,000 doors. We made 170,000 phone calls. We sent another 120,000 text messages to people in our district, almost entirely through volunteer organizers and supporters. And the reason we were able to mobilize that is because we were actually standing up for something. The reason we were able to turn people out is because we said in the United States of America, we deserve improved and expanded Medicare for all. Because we said that it's time to end the war on drugs. Because we said that we deserve to have tuition-free public colleges and trade schools for all. And because we deserved in our district, which happened to be 50% immigrant, we took a very bold stance in standing up for our brothers and sisters in our community. And when you take a bold, clear stance, when you tell people exactly what you mean, they will come out. And that's what we have to do. Here in the labor movement, our job to fight against what's going on here is not just resistance. We need to invent a 21st century labor movement in the United States of America. And we need to identify what that means. We need to get back to our tables and we need to have conversations. What is going to be the new 40-hour work week and 2-day weekend? What is going to be that in 2018? What are those new demands? And that is what we counter with. We counter with a vision. That's what we counter with. That's exactly what we have to counter with. And we counter with organizing, because everybody has that brown paper bag. Everybody knows a member. I was so surprised today, too, because this movement is absolutely revitalized. I was just sitting down with UFT, the United Federations of Teachers. 50% of their membership is under the age of 26. This movement is alive and well. Alive and well. And our success is not a fluke. It is a consequence of hard work. It is a consequence of shoe leather. And if there is any movement in the United States of America that knows hard work, it is the labor movement. It is unions. I just want to reiterate that despite the odds, despite what it looks like, victory is always possible. We will prevail because the power of big people cannot be bought. But what it requires of us is to organize, to realize the power that we have, to realize the power that we have. We have power. That victory that we had on June 26th, that's not my victory. That victory does not belong to me. It belongs to us. It belongs to us. It belongs to the hundreds of people who turned out. It belongs to the working mothers who took up their hours after work and talked to their friends. It belongs to the students who knocked doors on Saturday evenings. Everybody who worked on this campaign was a working person. Everybody who worked on this campaign was busy. We had disabled and elderly organizers writing postcards to voters from their living rooms. Everybody has something to give. Everyone has something to give. Nobody is too powerless to give nothing. We all have power. We all have something to give. And what this moment asks of us is we need to ask ourselves, what do I have to give? Do I have an hour on a Monday evening? Do I have an extra $5 in my pocket? Can I make a phone call? We all have something to give. And what we need to do is dig deep, really reflect, and figure out, what can I give to my union? What can I do for this movement? And that is how we come together. So I want to thank you all. I hope you all know, and I hope you all understand that I am a friend of labor, and I am here in the trenches with you all. I will be with you shoulder to shoulder, and we will get through this, and we will have a 21st century labor movement.